The stars above the planet Frelara looked cold and silent, but below, the world burned. Frelara was a peaceful world. Its people, the Frelari, lived in quiet cities made of crystal and light. They sang songs at night. They cared for their forests. They had no weapons, no armies. They believed in peace, but peace did not stop the war from coming. The Zarkon Empire had found them. The Zarkon were not like the Frelari. They were a race of steel and blood. They wanted power. They wanted control. And when they saw Frelara, they saw something weak. The first attack came without warning. Zarkon ships appeared in the sky, black and sharp like knives. They rained fire on the cities. Towers fell. Forests burned. The Frelari ran and hid, but there was no place safe. Their leaders tried to speak with the Zarkon. The Zarkon only laughed. And so the Frelari made a choice they had never made before. They called for help. In a hidden mountain base, the last few scientists worked in silence. Smoke filled the air. Outside, the screams of people could still be heard, but inside they focused on one thing, sending a message, a single signal, short, simple, powerful. It carried a voice, a young voice, the voice of Leora, a Frelari child who had lost everything. Please, if anyone is listening, that we are dying, my home is gone. My family is gone, please help us. The signal went up into the stars. It passed dying satellites, broken stations, cold moons. It moved faster than light. It went beyond the known worlds. And then, silence. The message was out there. But would anyone hear it? On the great planet of Velathon Prime, the Galactic Council gathered. They were powerful, rich, safe. They saw the Frelari's message. They listened to the little girl's voice. And then, they spoke in soft voices. They are not part of our union, said one. If we help them, we may anger the Zarkon, said another. They are already lost, said a third. And so, they deleted the message. The Frelari had cried for help, but the galaxy turned away. Far across the galaxy, on the blue planet called Earth, the message reached an old station deep in space. A human officer alone in a cold room played back the signal. He didn't speak. He just stared at the screen. He saw the girl's eyes, heard her voice, felt the fear. He sent the message straight to Earth Defense Command. In a dark room, a group of humans stood around a table, generals, scientists, leaders. The message played again. No one said a word. When it ended, a long silence followed. Then, General Marcus Rain spoke. We are not part of the council. We don't care what they think. That girl asked for help. And we will answer. Someone asked. A relief. Ship? General Rain looked up. His face was cold, his eyes sharp. No, not aid, not food, not doctors. Send the Goliath. The room went still. The Goliath was not a rescue ship. It was a weapon. Deep in Earth's military space dock, the Goliath slept. It was not like other ships. It was huge, almost alive. Covered in armor, powered by AI, filled with weapons, no one had ever seen used. The ship could fight a fleet by itself. It could break a planet if needed. And now, it was waking up. Engines powered on. Lights blinked. Systems checked themselves. Commander Rain walked onto the deck. He looked out the window at the stars, he whispered. Someone cried for help. Now someone else will cry for mercy. On Frelara, the skies were filled with smoke. The last city was falling. The people hid in caves and tunnels. The Zarkon marched through their streets, proud and cruel. Leora sat in a cave holding a small stone. She whispered to it every night. Please, someone, answer. Her mother was gone. Her father never came back. She didn't know if her message worked. Then a voice came from the cave entrance. Child, come see. She walked out. Others followed. The sky had changed. A new shape had appeared. It was not a Zarkon ship. It was something bigger, Darker. It didn't move like the others. It floated. Silent. Waiting. The Goliath dropped from light speed just outside the Frelari system. It scanned the planet. It saw the Zarkon camps, the weapons, the ships, the burning cities. It saw everything. Commander Rain stood on the command bridge. "Target locked," said the AI. "Begin approach," Rain ordered. As the ship moved, Zarkon ships tried to stop it. They fired weapons, launched missiles. The Goliath didn't fire back. It just kept moving, and every weapon aimed at it missed, or was destroyed mid-air. Zarkon captains shouted, "What is that ship?" But it was too late. The war had already changed. The Goliath landed in the middle of a Zarkon-controlled city. The ground shook. The buildings cracked. The ramp opened. One man walked out. Commander Rain. He looked around. Fires burned. Zarkon soldiers aimed weapons at him, but he didn't blink. He spoke only once. "You hurt them. Now, we hurt you." Behind him, the Goliath powered up. Guns unfolded. Drones flew out. Shields flared. Leora watched from a distance, her eyes wide, her hands shaking. She turned to the others and whispered, "They came. The humans came." The Zarkon were ready for war. But they didn't know this was not war. This was judgment. As the night fell on Frelara, the stars lit up with something new. Not hope, not fear, something worse. A human warship preparing to unleash hell. The sky above Frelara was quiet, but the ground below was filled with whispers. The strange human ship had landed and nothing had moved since. It stood still like a beast asleep, but everyone could feel something deep inside it, waiting. The people of Frelara were afraid. They had never seen such a ship. It was not shiny like the Zarkon warships. It was dark, thick, and made of sharp edges and heavy armor. No flags, no greetings, no banners, just silence. Zarkon troops surrounded it, unsure what to do. Some looked at their leaders, waiting for an order, but no order came. The leaders were staring too. They had never seen anything like it. The scans showed that the ship had energy levels far higher than anything they had faced before. It was quiet, yes, but it was not weak. Then the ramp opened. A single man walked down. He was tall, with a long coat, metal boots, and a calm face. His name was Commander Rain. His steps were slow and steady. He did not carry any weapons in his hands. He walked like someone who had no reason to fear anything around him. The Zarkon soldiers raised their weapons, but he didn't stop. He walked to the center of the ruined city square, then turned to face them. His voice was low but clear. "You've done enough," he said. "Step away." The soldiers didn't move. Neither did Rain. Deep inside the crowd of Frelari, hidden in a broken building, young Leora watched him. She remembered his face from the message they had received earlier. He was the one who had said Earth was sending a response. She whispered to her older friend beside her, "Is he alone?" Her friend shook his head slowly, looking up at the massive ship behind the man. "No, not alone." The Zarkon commander finally stepped forward. His face was full of pride and confusion. "Who are you?" he asked loudly. Rain looked at him with eyes that did not blink. "I'm the answer to the question your actions asked." The Zarkon commander frowned. "This is our territory now. Leave or be removed." There was a soft sound from behind them. Human. Lights began to glow across the warship. Its engines were on. Panels shifted. Lines of light ran across the hull. Small round devices detached from the underside of the ship and hovered in the air around it. They looked like simple machines, but their movement was fast and exact. They floated silently, spinning and scanning. "Your time is up," Rain said. The Zarkon soldiers looked at each other. Some started backing away. One of them stepped forward and tried to threaten the man, but before he could finish his words, one of the floating drones moved between them. It didn't fire, didn't attack, but its lights turned red and the air around it began to hum. The soldier froze. Rain finally moved again. He looked around the square. The damage done by the Zarkon was everywhere. Burnt walls, shattered glass, broken homes. He spoke again. This place is not yours. These people are not yours. Earth received their message, and now we are here. We do not bring aid. We bring balance. He turned and walked back toward the ship. As he walked, the drones followed, staying close. The ramp rose again behind him and the ship's doors closed. Then, the real work began. The ship didn't fire. It didn't send out anything loud or bright. Instead, it scanned. Deep scans. Across the planet. It marked every base the Zarkon had built, every supply line, every communication point. One by one, the Zarkon systems began to go dark. Power disappeared, weapons failed, radios turned to static. It was as if the planet itself had stopped listening to the Zarkon. Confusion turned to panic. Their leaders shouted into dead comms. Their vehicles stopped responding. Some tried to fly away but were blocked by strange invisible walls that shimmered when touched. The Frelari, hiding in caves and ruins, slowly came out. They looked up and saw that the sky had changed. It was no longer full of fear. There was something new now, something watching from above. Not a rescuer, not a friend, something else. Leora stood in the street. She looked at the giant ship and said, "This is not help. This is something stronger." Her friend nodded. "It is a message." The next morning, everything was quiet. The Zarkon had pulled back from many areas. They were trying to regroup, trying to understand what they were dealing with. They had never faced anything like this. In their main command ship, the top Zarkon officers argued. They had thousands of troops, dozens of ships, but none of them wanted to go near the human vessel. They didn't know what it would do next. Commander Rain stood once again in the control room of the Goliath. His face was calm, his hands behind his back. He looked at the map of the planet in front of him. The ship's AI spoke softly. All targets mapped, defensive systems stable, Frelari civilians unharmed. Rain nodded. Maintain position. No action unless they attack. He walked to the large window looking out at the planet. They cried for help, he said quietly. We heard them. Now the galaxy will listen too. Far away, a small signal left the Goliath. It was sent to Earth, to other human outposts, and even into open space for others to hear. It was short and clear. Mission active. Civilians protected. Presence established. The galaxy had ignored the Frelari's message, but they would not ignore the humans' reply. And the Zarkon, they now had a choice. Would they retreat, or would they test what Earth had brought to this forgotten planet? Either way, they would learn something new. Earth did not send comfort. It sent a ship with purpose. And it had only just arrived. The stars above Frelara seemed still, but something was shifting beneath their quiet shine. The day after the human ship landed, the planet no longer felt the same. The Zarkon troops kept their distance. They didn't speak much. Their patrols had stopped moving forward. Their camps were quieter. Some of their soldiers looked toward the sky more often now, toward the dark shape of the Goliath hovering over the hills. Inside the Goliath, everything was calm, yet fully awake. The air was clean, lights soft, machines humming in perfect rhythm. Commander Rain stood in the main control chamber, watching reports appear on the glass in front of him. Status? He asked. The AI replied smoothly. Frelari population. Secure. No movement from Zarkon in outer regions. Communications remain silent. Rain nodded. He had seen this before. The silence meant the Zarkon were thinking, planning, waiting. But what they didn't know was, so was Earth. Deep within the Goliath's core, data was being sent back to Earth at every moment. Images of ruined cities, readings of strange technology, records of how the Zarkon had taken the planet. Every piece of information was being shared. Earth was watching, and so were others. Far across space, deep in unspoken corners of the galaxy, old races who had long ignored the cries of weak planets were now paying attention, not because they cared about the Frelari, but because of the ship, because of the humans, because something was happening that didn't follow the usual rules of the stars. On the ground, life was slowly returning. Small groups of Frelari came out from hiding, rebuilding small shelters from the remains of broken buildings. The presence of the Goliath above gave them a strange feeling of safety. It did not smile. It did not speak. But it stood still and watched. Like a guardian, Leora helped carry food to an old woman who had lost her home. She looked up at the ship often, wondering what was inside, wondering why the humans had come when no one else did. Her friend, Taryn, sat beside her that night by a fire made from gathered wood. The sky was clear. "Do you think they'll stay?" he asked. Leora thought for a moment. "I think they're waiting." "For what?" She looked up again. "For a reason." Elsewhere on the planet, in a quiet Zarkon facility built beneath the rocky surface, leaders were gathered around a table. Screens flickered with maps and unreadable signals. A deep sense of uncertainty filled the air. "This ship does not act like others," one of the officers said. "It moves little, but we cannot reach it. Every attempt to scan inside fails." Another replied, "It is blocking our systems. We've lost control of 3 drone patrols and 2 supply routes. But they did not destroy them. Just turned them off." The leader stood. His expression was calm but tense. "Then they are watching us, waiting to see what we will do." He turned to a communication screen. "Send a message to the humans. Let's see if they want to speak." Back on the Goliath, the signal was received. A small light blinked. "Transmission detected," the AI announced. Rain stepped closer. "Open channel," a voice filled the room. "Cold, formal, Zarkon. We request a meeting, a safe place. No threats, just discussion." Rain didn't answer right away. He walked to the window, staring at the quiet land below. Then he said simply, "Send location. 1 hour. No guards." The message was sent. The Zarkon now had their answer. An hour later, in the shadow of a broken tower, Rain stood alone. No drones, no guards, just him. A single Zarkon figure appeared on the other side of the ruins. He was older, dressed in dark robes, and walked with slow, careful steps. They met in silence. The Zarkon spoke first. "You are far from your home." Rain didn't blink. "Not as far as you think." "You protect people who are not yours?" they asked. The Zarkon tilted his head. "Why not ignore the call, like the rest of the stars?" Rain stepped forward. "Because silence does not make you innocent, and fear does not make you safe." The Zarkon paused. His face was calm, but his fingers twitched. "You are few. We are many." Rain's voice remained steady. "You are loud. We are listening." The Zarkon said nothing, then he turned and left. No deal, no threats, no promises, just silence again. That night, deep inside the Goliath, new signals came. Earth had sent word. "Continue observation, reinforcements in motion." Rain smiled for the first time, not because help was coming, but because Earth had sent a message in return. "We are not finished. We are only beginning." The stars watched quietly. The Frelari waited. The Zarkon whispered, and the Goliath stood, unmoved. But beneath its surface, engines warmed, systems turned, and something deeper prepared to rise. Not for battle, not for destruction, but for the moment when silence would end, and truth would speak. The third sunrise after the Goliath's arrival looked different. It wasn't the sky or the colors. It was the feeling. The people of Frelara stepped into the light with less fear. Their steps were still slow, but steadier. Children no longer hid behind doors. Elders began walking to the edges of Old Town streets again, breathing the morning air as if it had finally returned to them. Above, the Goliath still floated, silent as ever. But it had changed the world below. It had not moved. It had not spoken, and yet it had changed everything. Inside the ship, Commander Rain stood alone in a chamber full of moving images. Every screen, every sensor, every whisper from the planet was now known to the ship. He watched as the Zarkon quietly retreated from another southern outpost. No announcements, no alarms, just empty buildings, cooling machines, and footprints fading in the dust. "Another zone is clear," the AI said softly. Rain nodded. "They're testing our patience. They appear to believe we will not act unless pushed." He looked down at a holomap showing the Zarkon fleet still parked in orbit's shadow. "They're waiting for us to blink first," the AI responded, gently. "You don't blink." Rain didn't smile, but a quiet breath left him. "No, we don't." Far across the region, Leora sat on a smooth stone overlooking the valley. She held a small piece of metal in her hand, once part of her home's roof. Now it was a memory and a reminder. Her friend Taryn approached, carrying 2 small fruit pieces wrapped in leaves. "They've gone from the hills," he said. "No one saw them leave, but they're gone." Leora didn't look up. "That makes 3 places in 2 days." Taryn sat beside her, handing her one of the fruits. "What do you think it means?" She finally looked at him. Her voice was low. "It means they're unsure, and that's dangerous." Taryn blinked. "You mean they might come back?" She stared at the distant black shape of the human ship in the sky. "No," she said slowly. "I think they're trying to understand how strong Earth really is." Taryn's face tightened. "But the ship hasn't done anything yet, it just watches," Leora replied. "Sometimes the quietest presence speaks the loudest." Meanwhile, deep in orbit behind a silent moon, the Zarkon fleet remained hidden. In their command vessel, officers stood around a long table as images of the Goliath flickered across screens. Readings were incomplete, internal scans failed, and every signal sent to it returned only static or silence. They were growing tired of waiting. "We do not understand this ship," one officer said. "But it has done nothing to stop our ships, above, only the ground." Another added, "Perhaps it is bluffing. Its silence may be a sign of limitation." The supreme officer said nothing. He simply looked at a still image of Commander Rain from a previous recording. "A ship does not need to speak when it holds the center," he finally said. "And right now, that man holds the center of this planet." He turned to another officer. "Send a drone, not close, not aggressive, just curious. Let's see how it responds." Hours later, a small object floated slowly through the upper atmosphere of Frelara. It made no sound. It sent no signal. It only watched. But the Goliath saw it the moment it left orbit. Inside, lights blinked. "Unmarked observer detected," the AI said. Rain stood at the console, calm. "Distance? 300 kilometers. Low orbit. Passive systems." He narrowed his eyes slightly. "Send a mirror signal. Let them know we see them." The AI sent a soft pulse through space. The drone paused. Then it changed course. It didn't turn back. It simply adjusted its path to avoid flying directly over the Goliath. Rain watched in silence. Even in the stars, there was respect. Later that day, something unexpected happened. A signal reached the Goliath. Not from the Zarkon. Not from Earth. From deep space. An unknown source. Encrypted. Old technology. Not used in years. "Should I block it?" the AI asked. Rain shook his head. "No, let's hear it." The signal crackled to life. A voice, distorted, tired, but alive, spoke. "To any human command. This is Station M9. Requesting contact on survivors aboard. Signal lost 23 years ago. Please respond." Rain's eyes narrowed. "Origin?" the AI replied. "Outer rim. 3 light years from current position. Off-grid. Marked abandoned." Rain stood still, a lost human station, sending a cry after more than 2 decades. And Earth had never heard it. But the Goliath had. Later, in the evening light over Falara, Rain stepped onto the landing platform of his ship. The sky was orange. The wind was still. Leora was waiting at the base, with Terran beside her. She had requested to speak. Rain approached quietly. "You're watching the stars again," she said. He nodded. "I heard." "You received another call," she added. He didn't deny it. "Will you leave?" she asked. Rain looked out at the horizon. "Not yet, for Lara is not finished. And Earth doesn't walk away from open questions." She smiled faintly. "The others are starting to believe you." Rain replied softly, "That's not why I'm here." "Then why are you here?" He turned to her. "To show the stars that silence is not power, and that some questions deserve answers." That night across the galaxy, new watchers tuned in. The Goliath's presence had begun more than a reply. It had become a signal, to the forgotten, to the ignored, to those who had once cried out, and had never been heard. Earth had not just answered, it had returned, and it was listening. The silence after the signal from Station M9 was thick. Inside the Goliath, Commander Rain paced slowly, his mind spinning with questions no one had answers for. A lost station, untouched for more than 2 decades, hidden on the edge of known space. Why had Earth never responded before? And why was its call reaching them now? The ship's systems hummed quietly, lights blinking in steady rhythm, as if the Goliath itself waited for a sign. Outside, the stars kept their watch, their light steady and unchanging, but underneath that calm, a storm of possibilities was gathering. Back on Falara, the planet's small villages buzzed with new energy. The Frelari people spoke softly about the humans and their great ship, hovering above. They told stories by the fires about how the humans had come not with weapons but with promises. Promises that they would not abandon those who cried for help. Leora stood in the middle of a growing crowd, telling the story once more to eager children. "They do not come like others," she said, her voice steady. "They come like the wind, quiet but strong, like the river that never stops flowing. They listen when no one else will." Terran, standing nearby, smiled. "Do you believe they will stay?" a child asked. Leora looked up at the dark silhouette of the Goliath against the twilight sky. "For now, yes," she said, "but we must be ready for whatever comes next." Meanwhile, aboard the Goliath, Rain's crew worked tirelessly. The message from Station M9 had shifted their mission. No longer was it just about watching and waiting. Now, they had a direction. "Set course," Rain ordered. "We are going to find that station." The crew moved with purpose. Machines shifted, engines adjusted, and the ship began to change its angle toward the distant rim of space. The unknown had called, and humanity would answer. The journey was long. Days passed, systems checked and rechecked. The Goliath glided through silent space like a shadow, following a faint beacon hidden in the starfield. Inside the command chamber, Rain stood alone, staring at the slowly growing image on the main screen. A station, battered and old but still alive. Its signal was weak but steady. They had found it. When the Goliath finally arrived near the station, the crew saw a place frozen in time. No lights shone from its windows. No engines hummed, only the faintest flicker of life inside. Rain sent a small shuttle down. The airlock opened slowly. Inside, the station was dark and cold, but not empty. Footsteps echoed in the quiet halls. Shadows moved. And then a voice, soft and weak. "Is someone there?" The voice belonged to a single survivor, a woman named Mara. She had waited years in the dark, surviving on hope and memories of a world she had lost. When Rain met her, she looked tired, but her eyes held a spark. Why didn't you send a message sooner? Rain asked gently. Mira's voice trembled. We tried, but no one heard us. Our calls were lost. Our world forgotten. Rain nodded, understanding the weight of her words. We are here now, he said. You are not alone. As they brought Mara aboard the Goliath, new questions rose. What had happened to the station's crew? Why had the signal been silent for so long? And who, or what, had blocked their calls? Rain knew the answers would not come easily, but he also knew this was only the beginning. Far away, beyond the edge of known space, unseen eyes watched the Goliath and its precious cargo. Old alliances stirred, new powers noticed. The galaxy was waking, and Earth's return was more than a mission. It was a message, one that would change the stars forever. Back on Frelara, Leora and Terran looked up at the sky once more. The Goliath was no longer just a shadow. It was a promise, a sign, a hope, and the stars, once silent, began to listen. The stars stretched endlessly around the Goliath as it drifted through the quiet space near the lost station. Commander Rain stood in the observation deck, his eyes fixed on the distant points of light that seemed so calm. And yet, beneath that calm was a storm no one could see. Mara had become part of the crew now, her presence a reminder of the past and a warning about the future. She spoke little, but when she did, her words carried weight. The galaxy is not as quiet as it seems, she told Rain one evening. There are places where darkness hides, where voices have been silenced for a long time. Rain nodded slowly. We've seen that, but we are here now, and that changes everything. Back on Frelara, the people had begun to rebuild their world with new hope. The Goliath's presence was no longer a mystery. It was a promise of protection, a symbol that someone cared. Leora stood beside Terran, watching children play near the ruins of their old home. They speak of the humans like gods, Terran said. Softly, Leora shook her head. Not gods, protectors, friends, they listen when others would ignore us. Terran looked up at the stars. Do you think Earth will really stay? He asked. Leora's voice was steady. For as long as we need them. Inside the Goliath, new messages arrived from Earth. Plans were forming. Reinforcements were on the way. The lost station had opened a door that no one expected, but not all eyes watching the Goliath welcomed these changes. From shadowed corners of the galaxy, watchers moved with quiet urgency. Old rivalries stirred. Ancient fears whispered through the void. The galaxy was shifting. Rain gathered his officers. We are not just rescuing survivors anymore, he said. We are stepping into a larger story, one that will touch every corner of the stars. His voice was calm, but full of resolve. We must prepare. The days that followed were filled with work and questions. The Goliath adjusted its systems to better support the lost station. Mara shared stories of her people's last days on the station, describing strange signals and unseen watchers that had made communication impossible. Something powerful was blocking us, she said. Something that wanted us forgotten. Rain's mind raced. Could it be the same force that had taken Frelara? He wasn't sure. But he knew one thing. Humanity's answer was no longer just about one planet or one lost station. It was about the right to be heard, the right to be seen. Far away, across the dark spaces between stars, a new signal blinked on a hidden console. It was small, quiet, but it carried a message, one that promised the galaxy's next move. The Watchers were ready. Back on Frelara, the night sky was brighter than usual. The Goliath's lights shimmered softly, reflecting hope and promise. Leora stood outside her new home, feeling the weight of what was to come. Terran stood beside her. We are not alone, he said quietly. No, Leora agreed. And this time, we will not be silent. In the final moments of the day, Rain stood once more on the observation deck. He looked out into the vastness and whispered, "This is just the beginning." The stars did not answer, But somewhere deep in space a new light began to shine, and Earth's warship, the Goliath, stood ready for the battles that would come, for the voices that would be heard, for the future that had just begun.